Hey, good morning to everybody. Happy Labor Day weekend. It's Daryl here, aka Artist in Recovery, and once again, this is a recovery video, and I'm coming to you from my usual morning bike ride. There's my baby, right there. And I wasn't planning on making this video today, and I actually just saw something on the side of the road. I'll get to that in a second, but I saw something on the side of the road and it got the wheels turning. And this is something important. If you're in recovery, if you're in any stage of recovery, if you're in later stages of recovery, you probably are familiar with what I'm going to say. But if you're in very early recovery, this is probably important to you. This is one of the main reasons that I actually have coming up on 19 years clean and sober. This right here, having this plan has contributed to me being clean and sober. And it's having a plan, especially when you come across triggers, or more specifically, having a plan when you come across old associates that you used to party with. Okay, this hasn't happened to me. Like I said, on October 23rd, I'm going to have 19 years. This happened more in the first years of my recovery because, to be completely honest, and I'm not just saying this, most of the people that I used with are dead. I'm not saying that to sound scary or anything, but it's the God's honest truth. I'd say over 80% of the people that I used with are dead. So it doesn't happen as much anymore. Okay, here's the basic idea, the basic premise. You have to have a plan in your head, a go-to plan. The second that you come across this situation, the second you come across a car of your old buddies, and they're like, "Hey, dude, what's up? Come on over here." Or if you're a chick, "Hey, chick, hey, babe, what's up?" The second, and that does happen. It happens, especially in your first days, weeks, months of recovery. You're going to run into people you used to use with. And you have to have this plan. An immediate gut reaction. Just completely bam. It's something, go to, this is, something you just pull the trigger immediately. And it's to walk away, to ignore it. And that's what I had in my mind. And I can give you a couple examples. I remember this one time I was riding my bike. This is when I first started. This was probably back around 2010. And I was at a state park, and it was about 9, 10 a.m. in the morning. I was on my bike. And I pull into the parking lot where I'm turning around on my bike, and I see a car. Whenever we used to use, you probably, if you used to use, you'll know what I'm talking about. We always parked at the very end spot with the tail end facing in, the front end facing out. The most suspicious looking way to park, that's how we parked. The spot all the way at the other end of the parking lot, facing the entrance so you could see anybody coming in. Tell me cops don't see that. But that's not what this is about. So I pull in, and I see a car. I didn't recognize it. And it looks like there's quite a few people in it. I'm not going to stare or look or anything. I'm maybe 100 feet away. And all of a sudden I hear, "Hey, dude, Daryl, what's up, man?" And I look over, and to tell you the truth, I don't even remember who it was, who the people in the car. There was about 4 people that I used to know. And I see hands waving out the window. Now, mind you, this is 9 or 10 in the morning, okay? And this is a car full of 4 guys on a weekday sitting in a parking lot. They're probably not off, on a break from work. Probably not. This is what I'm talking about. This second right here, they're like, "Dude, come on over, man. Hey, dude, Daryl, you got to have this down. This is important." That time I just waved, and I turned around and left. "Dude, what the fuck, man? You're gonna be like that?" And here's the thing. When I looked over at him, I know I saw smoke coming out of the car. I knew what they were doing. They were smoking rock, without a doubt, and God knows what else. Probably a lot of other things. I wouldn't be surprised. And they've probably been out all night. That's what it looked like. And I turned around and left. All right. Now, you got to have this down in your head what you're going to do. Because if you hesitate for 1 second, that little addict voice is going to start saying, dude, you can't blow them off, man. You can't blow your buddies off. You're gonna act like that. You're gonna act like a dick. You're gonna drive away. Just go over and say hi, man. You can still say no. Just at least be cool. That's what that little voice is going to be saying if you hesitate. You do not hesitate. You got to have this in your head. The second this happens, bam, you're gone. No, thank you. Bye-bye. I don't want to talk. I don't want to reminisce. I don't want to, chew the fat. I don't want to catch up on what's going on. You turn around and get the fuck out of there immediately. No ifs, ands, or buts. And this has saved me numerous times. Now, this is what would happen if I did go over to that car. If I went over to that window, rode my bike over, right? I would have seen 4 guys in the car. I'm sure I would have seen a pipe. There would have been smoke. I would have gotten a whiff of what they were smoking. And it would have just got, every second, it would have gotten that much harder for me to turn around. Every second that went by, it would have gotten that much more likely that I was going to relapse that day, that moment. This is why you cannot put yourself in this situation. Maybe you might think you're strong enough to do it, but me, no, absolutely not. And I believe this has saved me numerous times. And you've got to have this plan down in your head. So the second it happens, there's no thought about it. You see them, you recognize them, turn around, and you go. That's it. No ifs, ands, or buts. Every second that goes by, it's more and more. Like I said, if I went up to that window, I know what they would have said. Dude, you want to hit? Oh, come on, man. And the smell would have been getting to me. And I don't know. I don't know for sure what would happen. But why put yourself in it? This is what I used to say to myself, too. You got to ask yourself, what good is going to come of this? And when you see them over in the car, your buddies calling you over, what good's going to come of this? What good things are going to come into my life from doing this? None. Chances are it's going to fuck your life up. I mean, royally. All right. Then I remember another time right off the top of my head. Same park. This is actually the park we used to live at when I was a kid. That my father ran back years before. And this was, Audrey, my girlfriend that passed away from COVID 4 years ago. She was in recovery, but she was more of a drinker. She was an alcoholic. And she was doing great. She was actually the head of human resources. She hired people at one of the biggest high-end recovery places here in Connecticut. Cliffside, I think it's called. Anyway, a car goes by me, and the car stops, and they're like, "Hey, Daryl," and it goes by us a little ways, and we're hiking, and it stops, and I tell Audrey, just keep walking. And she's like, "Really? You sure you don't want to just go say?" I said, just trust me, keep walking. And sometimes it's hard like that. Even the girl I'm with, like I said, she was more of a drinker, going to clubs and stuff. That was her problem. That was her drug of choice. So maybe she doesn't, I don't think she really understood what I knew was going on in these cars. What I would see if I went up to the window. Like I said, alcohol was more of her thing. So she didn't, so it makes it all that much harder. When the person I'm with says, "You sure you're not going to go say hi?" My girlfriend says that to me. So you got to have this down in your head. Everybody that I used to associate with, everybody that I even used just one time with, is a huge trigger being around for me. If I can, I need to avoid them at any and all costs. Just turn and get out of the area. And that has worked for me. If some people think I'm a dick, great. I'm a clean and sober dick, and I'd rather be that. Now let's get to today. What reminded me of this to talk about this? I was coming up the hill over here on my bike, and I looked off to the side. I find so much stuff. I've been riding this bike for like my whole recovery, 19 years, and these main streets, you find crazy stuff. I have found at least over a dozen cell phones. I just found one last week that was perfectly functional, and I brought it to the police station and turned it in. I see paraphernalia all over the place on the side of the road, needles, stuff like that. And it looked like it was about 8 inches long, 9 inches long. It was about 4 inches wide, about 3 inches thick. And it was wrapped in, it looked like it was wrapped in tape. And it looked like it looked like a key, like a kilo, right off the bat, and I almost stop. I go to put my foot down, and my mind's going a million miles an hour because I wasn't prepared if this happened. What if it was? Or what if more realistically, what if it was a little bag of something or a pill bottle or something like that, and I thought about this. I was like, you have to keep this in your head. Even after 19 years, I don't want to get complacent. You got to have a game plan. So I started thinking, what if that was a key? What if it was a bag of something? And I hate to say this, but I don't know if I might have stopped and picked it up. That little voice in my head would immediately start saying, dude, it's money. Like a key is like 20 grand or something. I thought, what if it was? What would you do? Would you stand there and call the cops? Would you turn it in? Would you put it in your backpack? And I started thinking, I was like, there's a good chance. I hate to admit this. I'm glad I gave this a lot of thought today, because now I cleared up my thinking. Now, if this ever does happen and I see something on the side of the road, I am going to go right by it, no matter what it is, no matter what it's worth, no matter what. And I'm glad I thought about it today. But before this day, before I got it straight in my head, I might have stopped. I might have, that little voice might have been saying, dude, that's $20,000. You don't have to do it. You could pick it up, throw it in your backpack, and now I don't have any connections. I don't know where to get rid of stuff, so that would mean going to bars or finding connections, and the more I thought about it, I was like, if that did happen, the second I went over to pick that up, if it did happen, I'd be screwed. My life would go to shit. I wouldn't sell any. I'd end up using it. I'd end up losing my apartment. I'd end up losing everything. My family, there's a good chance I'd end up losing my life. So I'm kind of glad I thought about this today. Because I really didn't have that quick response that I should have had. I should have had that solid, quick response. If you see something that looks like that on the side of the road, just keep on freaking pedaling. Or if you want to be a good American, call the police and report it. But do not stop. Do not pick it up. Don't sit there and drool over it or kick it around or poke it with a stick. Just keep freaking going. And other than that, you can call the police. But and now I got it in my head. Now it's a solid. If I see something, because I've thought it through now. Luckily, I was lucky enough that it wasn't actually a real situation, and I've had the time to think it through. And now, like this is an example when you have 19 years clean and sober, where you start to get complacent. These are the things that kept me clean. Having a game plan to override, to not let that little voice start getting its foot in the door, because the second it just takes 1 or 2 seconds for that little voice in your head to start talking and start giving you little reasons and manipulating, well, dude, you could do this, it could be some money, you don't have to do it, things will turn out all right, nobody has to know, you could get rid of it later, just see what happens. And once again, the old saying I had, what possible good can come of this? None. Even if you decide to sell it, 20 grand, that's illegal money. That's not how I live my life now. No good would come of that. No good, no way, no how. If you're ever presented with that situation, keep going. Just some things to think about. Recovery is possible. Have a great Labor Day weekend.